again. I'm going to read you some more stories, this time about a character called Nellie Choc-Ice. There are 3 books in the series: Nellie Choc-Ice, the Penguin Explorer, Big Trouble for Nellie Choc-Ice, and Nellie Choc-Ice and the Plastic Island. There are 2 videos for each one, so make sure you get them in the right order because it's one long story in 6 parts, if you like. So this is Nellie Choc-Ice, the Penguin Explorer, and you'll find out all about her. Nellie Choc-Ice is a penguin. There are several different kinds of penguin, just as there are different kinds of people. Nellie Choc-Ice is a macaroni penguin. If you don't believe me, you can look macaroni penguin up online and you will see lots of lovely pictures. You might be wondering why she's called Nellie Choc-Ice. Grandpa Penguin is to blame for that. When she was a new little penguin just hatched from her egg, Grandma Penguin asked her mum and dad what her name was. Nellie, Small Ma and Small Pa said. She's much more than a plain Nellie, Grandma complained. Look at that lovely white chest and glossy black wings. She looks just like an ice cream covered in dark chocolate. Nellie Choc-Ice, Grandpa chuckled. Nellie Choc-Ice, Small Pa beamed. Small Ma thought it was a good name too. The fluffy bundle at their feet gazed up at her family. Nellie Choc-Ice, she squeaked, and then she fell over. That was because she'd only just been born and was small and weak. I expect you used to fall over a lot when you were small. Nellie liked to be an explorer from the moment she was born. She mostly explored the rocky ground around her. This was because she kept falling over. As Nellie grew older, she explored the sea too. She was better at that because you can't fall over underwater. Don't try it yourself. You're not a penguin. You can try it if you are a penguin. Soon Nellie was on her feet all the time. She loved visiting her family. It was a large family. Nellie had hundreds of brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, nephews and nieces, great aunts, great uncles, little aunts and little uncles, not to mention one very small uncle who wore a hat and played the guitar. You can just see him at the bottom of the picture. Nellie loved exploring so much that she soon climbed to the top of several very big icebergs that no other penguin had ever climbed before. In fact, some of her family asked her why she bothered. Because I can, Nellie answered. Because they're there. Then the other penguins would look at her and say, oh, Nellie, you are a penguin. And Nellie thought that was even funnier because, of course, she was a penguin. So why did they bother to tell her? Anyhow, it wasn't long before Nellie Choc-Ice became the most famous penguin explorer ever. You can't check that online, but I'll tell you it's true. You can believe me because I'm a writer. You might now be wondering how Nellie became so famous. You are wondering, aren't you? If you don't want to know, then you may as well go and read something else, like The Very Boring Adventures of a Penguin That Didn't Do Anything. What a waste of time that book would be, and not very interesting at all. It would be much better for you to stick with this book. That is because the story of world-famous penguin explorer Nellie Choc-Ice is very interesting. In fact, the next chapter of the story of Nellie Choc-Ice gets very exciting, so please carry on. Nellie wasn't afraid of anything except killer whales. Killer whales eat penguins, so it was a good thing that Nellie was scared of them. There are a lot of killer whales in the oceans around Antarctica. You do know that penguins live in Antarctica, don't you? It's a pretty wild place. It's full of snow, ice and wind, and it's very cold. Sometimes it is so cold it makes your toes turn black and fall off. Unless, of course, you are a penguin. Anyway, one day Nellie Choc-Ice was standing on the ice in the wind, looking out to sea. She was puzzled. Something thin and black was coming towards her little by little. Nellie decided it was a man walking across the water. But it wasn't. It was the periscope from a submarine. Nellie had a good eyesight, but she'd never seen a submarine before, so it's not surprising she made that mistake. Then the top part of the submarine appeared, the bit that's called the conning tower. It's a man a long way away, Nellie told herself. He's walking on the water, and now he's carrying a suitcase. Then the water started to boil up around the conning tower. It sloshed about, and all of a sudden the whole submarine popped up onto the surface of the sea. No, 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 Nellie cried. It's a killer whale. It's coming to eat me. Poor Nellie was so scared. She ran away as fast as she could. She jumped onto the nearest iceberg and climbed right to the very top. But as Nellie stood at the top, the iceberg wobbled. A big crack opened up down one side. The biggest part began to drift away into the open sea, and that was the part of the iceberg that had Nellie Choc-Ice clinging to the top. Oh dear, what was she going to do? Meanwhile, inside the submarine, a man with an enormous beard was staring into his periscope. The man's name was Rear Admiral Captain Beardybeard. He wasn't called a Rear Admiral because he sat at the back of the submarine. In fact, I don't know why he was called a Rear Admiral at all, but he was. I think we shall just call him Captain now and forget about the Rear Admiral bit. I'm sure he won't mind. But I do know why he was called Beardybeard. When he was a little baby, his granny sat him on her lap and said, "One day this boy will grow up and have a big beardy beard." And he did, so his granny was right. Anyway, Captain Beardybeard was peering through his periscope, to see what was going on. "I can see a penguin going for a ride on an iceberg," he told his crew. "That's so sweet." All the other crew lined up to have a look in the periscope. They laughed and smiled a lot. That evening, they wrote emails to their families. "Dear Mum, saw a penguin riding on an iceberg today. It looked fun. Love from Charlie." But it wasn't fun for Nellie at all. She was all alone. She was miles out at sea and she didn't know where she was going. As it grew dark, Nellie wondered if she was ever going to see her family again. The iceberg drifted along with a miserable Nellie sitting on top, all by herself. Where were all her lovely relatives? They were a long way away. The Antarctic was now far behind, and the distance between the land and the iceberg was growing day by day. The weather grew warmer and the iceberg began to melt. Nellie's icy island was shrinking. Oh dear, how alarming! One day, a large gull landed on top of the iceberg. He didn't even say hello to the little penguin before he started to chip chunks off the edge of the iceberg. You've probably noticed that gulls have very bad manners. I blame their parents. "Could you stop that, please?" Nellie asked, because she was a polite and well-brought-up penguin. "The sun is melting my iceberg, and if it melts away to nothing, I shall have no home." "Then fly away and find another one," the gull said, and he chipped off another piece of ice. "I can't fly," Nellie pointed out. Did you know penguins can't fly? Of course she did. But the gull didn't know. He was only interested in stealing sandwiches and ice cream cones from small children, or pecking at icebergs in order to annoy little penguins. He stopped and looked at Nellie. "Don't be ridiculous," he said. "You're a bird. Birds fly." "I know," Nellie said, "but I'm a penguin, and penguins can't fly." "That's the most stupid thing I have ever heard," declared the gull. "What's the point in a bird that can't fly?" Nellie stiffened her shoulders and gave the gull a severe look. "I swim. I'm a very good swimmer." The gull laughed so much he fell off the top of the iceberg. "You swim? That's ridiculous." "It's not ridiculous at all," Nellie snapped. "I can swim very well. In fact, swimming is just like flying, except you do it underwater. Can you swim underwater?" "I don't need to. I can fly." So the gull sniggered. He was feeling very clever. "Ha!" Nellie snorted. "Fancy not being able to swim underwater. Now that is ridiculous." "I'm not ridiculous. You're ridiculous," shouted the gull. Nellie Choc-Ice stamped her little foot. "Can't swim? Ha ha! Ridiculous!" The gull's eyes flashed. "You pesky penguin, I'll get you!" The gull dived down at Nellie, stabbing at her spitefully with his nasty beak. But Nellie simply plunged into the sea, where she was safe. The gull flew round and round, wondering where she had gone. At last he grew bored and flew off. Nelly flipped back onto her little icy island. "Ha!" she grunted as she gave her wings a quick shake. "Gulls! They're such bossy beaks." The sun shone. The day grew hotter and Nelly's world was melting away to nothing. Now join me in my next video to find out the end of this part of the story. Bye.